So by the time I get off, it's what? 10 after 9, so by the time I normally get online, it's about 9:30. If I drove from Kearns over here, I wouldn't be here till 10.
Thank you for being
So-
across. the
I
water.
agree.
That's huge.
So cute.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, when you're not doing anything and your wife says either get out of the house and get a job. Get out of the house, get out of the house, and come out.
I mean, we laugh, but I can't tell you how many retired gentlemen I have said, please, they're like, no, and I'm like, you're retired, they need you so bad.
Well, it's really not that bad, I mean,
Yeah,
and I
the kids love
The
it.
kids love
I
it.
only have like 5 kids, so,
Oh,
and it's not bad, you know, I mean, it's not crazy road that I do, but,
What road are you on?
Highland Boulevard,
What?
it's like 4,800 west,
oh,
about 4,800 south.
different weekend.
Yeah.
Very, that's great. And it's 35, and
Well, where'd you
the
go?
way the road bends, people drive like 60 down. I'm constantly down around.
Good. You
Oh
should.
my gosh.
It's like a paintball gun.
Did Renee ride too?
I love how they-
We're not recording.
I started before, so it doesn't say.
We went around.
Oh, yeah.
All that's Yeah. When it was on fire and on June.
When it was 107.
In fact,
it was 82.
Make sure that you were
All that.
stand here.
So we have that.
Can't open your window.
That way.
Right.
Well, they think they're.
My daughter and I went to a Warriors rugby game. And it was that Friday night where the wind. People would have dreamed it's. But that it's a fact. Albert John first. Yeah. So looks out over our alley.
Yeah. Nice.
Was it most Saturday? 4 or 5 times. Well, I don't have Christmas, so I just had that already from Brian.
No.
Just kind of throw it in. Start biting. We're seeing it all coming.
For this.
Well, so that shitty.
No, I probably would, like, I said.
This house is just how creative the paper and task they run and see the time. You're like, this is awesome.
It's just right. Sorry. Oh, sure.
Also, might be some another position.
Yeah, like an assistant mayor. She was pretty high up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to other cuts. It's like an adventure.
From my experience, these things can watch.
It's all good. You can clean it up after it. You can clean it up after it. It's fine.
There's just not much in the packet.
Does anybody else deserve?
Does this mean this is like a 20-minute meeting?
I'll say what I can do.
See the stuff.
See what I can do. Like, no more.
I like the sarcasm.
Or activism, native language.
What's going on? Okay.
It's like at council and they say, oh, look, we're gonna be done early. It's like,
Oh,
I'm
no.
not gonna say that.
Don't
I'm
say
gonna
it. Jinx it.
It's always a big one here.
I feel so badly when we have guests and it's like, oh, can we please put our guests at the
At the
beginning?
beginning, sometimes we do that, rearrange it.
We do that. We need to do it more. Our police chief and UFS, they can. They're gonna be there. Be there anyway.
Fire trucks. Of course. Police.
Yes.
Garbage.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your Wasatch Front Basin Recycling District Board meeting. It's June 23rd. Katerina, would you please?
Grace Shelton,
Present.
Emily Gray,
Yes.
Anna Barbieri,
Yes.
Diane Turner,
Yes.
Keith Zussman, Lori Stringham,
Yes.
Marcy Hausman, excused, Matt Bolton, Vic Sudbury, excused, Patrick Schaefer,
Here.
Robert Pignon, excused, Sherry Orange, Tessa Stitzman, Tom DeSiren.
Present. Oh,
I thought I heard something was that, thank you.
all right, thank you. Up first, we have our consent items. Any discussion or motions?
Motion to approve consent items, board meeting minutes, May 19th. 2025.
We have a second.
Second.
Emily? Anna, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we've got our public comments. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to say anything or any emails, notifications, everything done? No. All right, move on again. First item up, 3.1, legal counsel's memo to the board. Loving first.
Yeah, I was like, the delay helped me have some time to lie on this, so I always,
I was having a problem this morning, so I don't blame you.
those takes minutes, almost there. Like, I mean, it's up on the screen, but, okay, so. I was asked to help the district understand the procedures that would be required to even consider having a city withdraw from the district. So this memo is just that, it's a memo, it's, it's scrolling just to it up any. Okay, so this is just informational, just based on looking at the statute and just so that everyone's aware of what might be involved. No decision today, there's a lot to be considered. So when I was first brought this question, I heard a lot of people mentioning this one code section, this 505. That's why I put that number 1. And I just wanted to throw out there from the beginning that section doesn't apply. That's the one that allows fire police, it only applies to fire police and the NSC. So like when Harriman and say it's going under that statute. And so that's not applicable. There was a special statute that was negotiated for those safety districts and the NSD. That's the one that requires a feasibility study and potentially has a road to an election. But that statute does, I think, still have some good information for us because it has a long list of, considerations that the district might think about when deciding what to happen. Keeping in mind, keeping the district stable and sustainable after considering different things like asset distribution, debt distribution, and So I just wanted to throw that out there that it might be still something to look at, but the section 2 is the actual withdrawal procedures. So within the withdrawal statute, if you throw out the stuff that doesn't apply to us, we're left with it with the rest of the withdrawal statute. There are a few paths available, and then I stated here, although none of them are particularly straightforward. There's really, in this situation, there's really only 2 approaches, but they both involve a petition of the residents. But more or less, residents can petition the district directly. In fact, the signatures and file a petition directly to us, asking for us to consider a withdrawal of the city, or residents can put together a petition to give it to the city and ask the city to take that request to us. But none of these options allow the city itself to pursue it. The threshold requirements for this is that any signatures that equals the number of votes that cast in Harriman for governor in the last regular general election, at least 51% of that number. So take how many people voted for governor, not how many registered voters you have, but how many actually voted, and then 51% of that number, and that's the number of petition signatures you need. That's kind of a weird roundabout way of getting the number. I made a note here that there's a provision in the statute that prohibits public funds from being used to support or oppose a withdrawal petition. So in my mind, that makes me wonder if the city would be able to spend time or money on pursuing a petition, but that's not really a question I'm prepared to answer today, but something I think the attorneys should look at for the city. And then section 3, upon receipt of the petition, that's when the district required to hold a public hearing and provide notice to affected residents. So like I said, the statute that applies to public safety districts in the MSD has a more robust process of what you look at. And that's not included here. It is a little bit more broad, although some standards are imposed. So if you go scroll down, it says, regardless of the board's approach at analyzing withdrawal, meaning you can take the opportunity if you want to do a feasibility study and analyze whatever you want. But regardless of whatever approach you take, the statute specifically says that the withdrawal must be rejected if the proposed withdrawal would, and then any of these factors. Things such as resulting in a breach or default of any financial obligations, agreements with the United States government. Most of these aren't going to apply to us. The ability of the district to make any payments or performing obligations. Couple that do stand out to me that we would definitely need to look at is we can't allow a withdrawal to create an island or peninsula of non-district territory within the district, or of district territory within non-district territory, if that would have a material adverse effect on the district's ability to provide service or increase costs for the remainder of the district. So if we end up with any weird islands and peninsulas, and especially if that would result in increased costs of us trying to drive around weird locations, then that would be required to be rejected. And then the second last one, if it would materially impair the operations of the remaining district. And the last one is if it would require the district to materially increase its fees or charges for property taxes or levies to the remainder of the district in order to keep the same level of service as well.
So can I just make sure that I'm understanding that last point? So essentially, we would be required to reject the petition if it essentially financially hurts the district.
Right. If it would result in us not being able to operate as efficiently, right? If we determine that would be a materially adverse difficulty, or if it would require some fees to the district, then we would have part of that. So that is the process. I mean, that's the one that's been set forth by the legislature, and I'm going to get into another potential option, which is number 4, the boundary adjustment, then I'm gonna route back to why I have concerns about that. So, like I've said, the withdrawal procedures, as I just pointed out, are kind of onerous, especially in regards to getting petitions and residents. So I wrote in here that I thought it might be possible to do a departure through the boundary adjustment procedures. So the boundary adjustment code is really intended more to adjust minor variances in a boundary. And I think a perfect example is looking like a water district. A lot of times they're kind of gonna adjust things here and there. You know, if there's like area on the other side of a canal and it's like, it really doesn't make sense for us to serve over there. It makes sense for you district to do it. And so like, let's fix that boundary and just have you guys take that part over or something, you know. But I put in there, I mean, my read of the statute is that it could be possible to do a full city this way. And it's a little bit easier. It would require us to basically agree through a negotiation process of like the terms of what would fit. And then we would just do joint resolutions, public hearings, and then do. The caveat with this one is, after I wrote this memo, I talked to some folks and some attorneys that were involved with the drafting of it, and was given a little pause and said that the intent of the statute in the legislature really is that it should be done under the withdrawal procedure. And that was very specifically negotiated for very particular reasons, that they didn't want districts to be able to so easily, and that there was this effort to require an election process, but that was rejected, and they felt like the getting the petition was like, so some people feel very strongly that that is there for a reason, and it needs to happen that way, that any sort of withdrawal needs to be by request of the people. So I you know, still hearing the memo about the boundary adjustment, and me and the attorneys or whoever can talk about it and see what we think might be possible. But I just wanted to throw out that option because, like I said, I've already gotten some pushback using that option. Last one, the suggested evaluation criteria. I just thought, like I said at the very outset, that part of the statute that applies to fire, police, and MSB had a little bit more of a robust list of things that you could consider, and I just thought that that was really useful and would be, you know, a really reasonable thing for this board to consider. And so I just threw those considerations in here as well, because it's ultimately your financial and fiduciary responsibility to do what's in the best interest of the district. And so this list of items would help you analyze whether. None of this is to say that it wouldn't be possible, because I think it very well could be, and that could be done in a way that doesn't hurt the district. But just as, you know, legal representative for the district, I've got to show you what's the lay of the land and what's possible and what situations I should consider to make sure that everything is done correctly and leaves the district whole. And so, like I said, very preliminary. I haven't talked to everyone's attorneys or anyone. I don't know what people are thinking, but we to start having those conversations about what.
Thanks, Rachel.
Any questions?
And comments on that?
I'm nervous because I'm like, I know that this is a big topic that people are very interested in. I need to be like,
Well, I think it kind of goes back to Harriman, like
Yeah.
this is kind of the outline, and then you guys can decide from
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like this just kind of, so it's kind of been
yeah, exactly.
your residence court essentially.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would tell you just in discussing, just offline and with a few different council members here and there. And we've obviously discussed this in our very public meetings about withdrawal, and on our agenda tomorrow night will be a referendum to officially withdraw from the district. So I have no reason to believe that that won't pass based on previous conversations. So our intent is to move forward. When I read your memo, and I apologize about our attorney, because I talked to Pam about that. He has actually been out of town for the last couple of weeks, and so he gets back today. So that's why, after I talked to you, I was going to have him call. That's why he hasn't called. He's not been there.
Yeah, it's totally fine. We're
No,
very cool.
No, yeah, for sure, and he will be definitely working with you. I would guess that, I guess I just have a couple of different opinions about it. I'm definitely not an attorney.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and so that will be up to Todd to work through a lot of this issues, right? And when we read your memo, it's like, before it makes sense, it's the easiest process forward, and, it's hard because when you said request of the people a few minutes ago, well, that's my job, and every other person on our council is the people. We're a representative republic, so our job is to represent the people. So I believe that it is at the request of the people. We have very public meetings, we've chatted with people about this, we're open about it, there's public comment opportunities, so I can tell you the pushback I've received is the rate hike, not moving away from the district. So I feel like we're very much in harmony with what our residents would want. And don't disagree with that. It's a lot like the referendum when you talked about that the city can't spend money to promote this or not. It's same with the referendum process, right? If a petition comes forward from residents wanting something, the city has to stay neutral,
Right.
obviously. And so I assume that would be exactly the same. So that was, after I read the information that you had given to us that and discussed a little bit with some of the other council members occasionally, it was like, well, wouldn't it make sense just to move forward with the boundary adjustment?
Yeah.
And to do the negotiation, because, obviously, it's a little bit difficult because some of the wording in here when it says it would never require you to raise your rates if Harriman left, right? And it's like, it shouldn't require you to raise your rates because we shouldn't be subsidizing. And that's the whole question. Are we subsidizing other members of the district? I don't know. I mean, like, we're part of Jordan Valley and we pay our own rates. Jordan Valley has a very extensive process. They go through and say, here's what it costs to serve Harriman, here's what it costs to serve this city. And so everybody doesn't get the same rate hike. We have to pay what it costs to service our community, right? And so that, in my mind, that's the way districts should work. You should have to pay for what it costs to service your community. But
The only thing I would say on that is that the statute is like a one size fits all districts.
Sure.
It's not just looking at like our particular charge fees to every resident. Like, it's also to the districts that are solely funded by property taxes and different things.
sure,
And the only thing I can say is that in some instances, there would be an increase just because when you lose a big chunk, you lose some economies of scale sometimes. And it's not necessarily that this district or this section wasn't paying for itself or, or subsidizing or whatever. It's just that sometimes when you start losing more and more and more, it does get more expensive to have fewer people paying for the big economies of scale.
sure,
So I think that's kind of what it's considering as well.
absolutely.
Yes.
So, it sounds like you guys are moving forward and this, so if you decided to look at this second option, this boundary adjustment, as an alternative, it sounds like we need to really like dive in and see how feasible that is as an alternative. Cause so I would be interested in what that would look like, if that is a real option or just kind of a theoretical option.
Because I put it in there thinking it was a real option, but I got a phone call this week that was like, that is not. And so I'm like, okay, well, if we're gonna have pushback that makes it not possible, I need to suss that out before we go.
Sure.
If there's gonna be attorneys that were involved in this process that say, no, that is really not how this is meant to work, we need to know that beforehand, because I don't want to start that process and then have someone contact the lieutenant governor's office. So this wasn't done correctly, that wasn't an authorized method. Yeah. So,
And just something to keep in mind, just because I think a lot of the questions about feasibility and costs and raising rates and all of that, I think at some point a feasibility study would need to be done. I don't think, because Harriman's the one wanting to leave, I don't think the district should be footing the bill for that. So that's just something to keep in mind. I obviously don't think that's like prohibitive to like doing that, but just something to keep in mind as you guys are moving forward. So, yeah.
That's an interesting thought, Emily. I hadn't thought about that because feasibility studies can be extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the bylaws or in DIF that says who does make the feasibility study?
And what, I guess, the, objectives of the feasibility study also, because obviously, all studies can be very skewed and subjective to what you want the objective to be, right?
Sure.
And so because it seems to me like Renee has been a great ad as far as data collection, right? And I agree. We talked about this, we went through a big process recently of just saying, no, we're not doing that study, because every time you say, let's do another study, let's do another adjustment to that, it costs thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And it seems like we should have a lot of great data at our disposal that says what it costs to do different things, what would it cost us to scale back, those kind of things. Internally, it feels like we already should have a lot of the data. We know what it's costing per mile, those kinds of things, so we should have a really good sense of what it's costing to service each one of our areas. And so, you know what I mean, it might be that we can internally.
Yeah, I agree, Terry. I think the data that you've collected in the last 3 or 4 years is extraordinary. And I think that's one reason why I think we have a better handle on expenses and exactly what is being paid for, what's being subsidized, and the different cities and the mileage. And I think we can get at that here. I guess my question would be, even though it's not a feasibility study, how much time could it take?
Yeah, well,
To
we
put all
still
that,
costs, yeah, for sure.
So it'd just be, I think you could do it in-house, and I don't know, but that would be up to the board and up to Karen. As you said, some things can be skewed. I think it can be done well and fairly.
Yeah, me too.
In terms of the feasibility study that's called out, in one section that applies to public safety and safety, it talks about the feasibility study determining not only if it's feasible, but what would it take for it to be feasible. And so maybe that's something too, is it's like, this could work if Herman does this, or and it can consider things like what's the impact on the employees, the people, what's the impact on right now, we have all these extra fans, and you guys are buying those from us, and all that kind of stuff.
Which is, yeah, in my mind, to me, that was like, there has to be a negotiation process. When we left Salisa, and we left UFSA, it was the same thing. It's like, yeah,
You don't have to get here, but that
exactly.
it's supposed to be considered.
Just like I was saying, yeah, it's like buying trucks and things like that. It's when I talked to Pat, it's like, we're gonna hold off buying these green curb, whatever, greenways, curbsides.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And they said regardless of which method you use, that's obviously gonna be.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of little things to work out.
For sure.
So.
Well, I think the criteria that you have outlined on both like 0.3 and 0.5 are good, at least starting points is to to look at, and whether, because I can see advantages of doing it in-house and advantages of getting an independent stay. I can kind of see both, but because if you do it in-house, I mean, it's still going to cost, but then the district is footing the bill just with its own employees. And then you also, I think, run the risk of people questioning the integrity because they're like, oh, you want them to stay, so you're gonna skew the data that way. I also wonder about the point that you brought up, that maybe you brought up, oh, we can make this work if we do the following things. I'm not criticizing the expertise here, but I'm wondering if an organization that's used to doing feasibility studies might have a better skill set in helping develop the kind of creative solution that you would need to make it workable. So I'm not saying yes or no, I just think those are factors to look at in trying to look at the path forward.
Yeah. One thing I didn't mention, but just talking to is in the list of considerations that I put on the last page. Was I think I did. Yeah, I'm not seeing it, but one of the considerations that I think is important is that the board is able to, I think, should consider is what would be the impact of cumulative withdrawals. Because it's one thing to want to city leave, but then are we gonna get into a situation where more and more people leave, like this is not gonna be
The last man standing is holding the debt and the expenses.
Yeah, we've already got another city indicating that they're looking as well, so that's already a concern.
And again, that's not to say that the answer is yes or no, but it should be part of it. Reasonably consider requests now and in the future.
I think for our city, if there would be a further financial impact on us. And I'm not saying that will happen, but if that were to happen, then I have to at least tell our folks, okay, because there's a move of one city leaving and there's going to be a bigger impact to us, we should do our due diligence. Well,
Let's see.
Commonwealths.
Listen.
Yeah.
And you're saying, so.
So I'm saying, so if part of that analysis,
We have like a IOB for you, you're saying that would be triggered.
correct.
So what you might hear here, we'll talk about it. That's actually by statute that we're required to reject without that
Okay.
statute.
And that's why it might be nice to have third party say that.
I'm sorry.
Because intuitively, I can say it's more expensive, but it'd be nice for us to feed that data, kind of like the financial advisory services. There's a third party looking in, we gave the data, and we reviewed it, and they put it into their algorithms. And
Good
yeah.
points.
I mean, I think we, a firm that is an expert in doing this, I would appreciate, and I certainly, and it's your call, your direction. But it is the next item on the agenda, it's that would be clarification. But you're right, organizers are great at, it could be expensive. We don't know yet. Well, our yet, we kind of wrap our brains around what is.
It sounds like your lawyers have so much fun coming back from vacation. So like,
I guess I would also, note that the same recently, has happened up in Cache County. I'm sure there were. There are several cities, district there. And I have call in to a vacation there, supposed to be back today to ask them what the process that they went
For which district?
through. It was in Cache County.
It's a consortium. It's actually, it's a consortium that we developed because Lone City said they wanted to service. Yes, similar to that consortium. And it's reading through their bylaws, it's very interesting. They want that route, but I think we come in a special district. The Cache County.
If they're not district to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not necessarily, about the rules, but about the process, because obviously anytime this process happens, you're gonna look into what the separation process is, how did we negotiate, what did you do with your plans? You know, all those types of things to understand how to make that equitable between the two parties, those types of questions.
I'm not sure if they exited or if they chose not to join.
No, they exited, as I understand.
Okay.
They are just independently in their own city and decided to use other providers.
which city?
I know, one of them's
North Logan?
North Ogden.
Oh, North Ogden.
What's not
Oh, I didn't, sorry, whatever county that is. North,
So Weaver?
I'm sure it is.
Yes, Weaver County.
Weaver
So
County,
there's-
right, bad county.
Yeah, so there's there's North Logan City, I spoke to them there, and she's the one that sent me their bylaw, how they created the consortium. And then there was something in there about cities, and I thought they didn't, yeah, it sounds like they did exit.
So North Ogden is who, so that's a different too.
Oh, that's really.
Weaver,
Interesting. Okay. So that consortium did contract out to a private hauler, they didn't develop their own divisions or departments to haul their own. So therefore, very interesting.
anyway. Those are just information I was fed by different people, so I've not had I've made phone calls to make fact finding stuff, but it's like it's summer and everything's
I know, they.
Okay, well, if there's no other discussion around that, we'll go ahead and, move on to 3.2. Recommendations for RFP for feasibility of cities withdrawal from the district. Pam?
So, yeah, this feeds into the topic at hand and the thought of, yes, we'll have some information in-house, but it's so nice to have experts looking at the information that we have, asking those questions that we may not know to ask. So we could put together an RFP and see what comes back.
I'm not saying this isn't happening, but we might be, I think we need to wait and make sure that this, the boundary adjustment is a legal option forward, because it sounds like that makes the most sense. And if it's not, then, I mean, at some point, I think we would need to do a feasibility study, but it sounds like you guys would need to go through, the election process and getting it on the ballot and all of that.
Yeah, obviously, I don't think the district should. I'm not gonna,
Election.
no,
Oh,
it's just a petition.
Oh, a petition, that's what I mean, sorry.
I'm not suggesting that I'm gonna say, yes, Hiram is willing to pay for the feasibility study either, right? It has to be something that we talk about during negotiation, for sure.
Yeah.
So, we're probably premature on the RFP for now.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
Yeah.
Fair.
We're not quite there yet.
All right, well, it sounds like we're kind of in a holding pattern until we find out about the boundary adjustment.
I will explore that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And then we can circle back to that, discussion on RFP at a later time. Right. 3.3, policy revisions for general managers and a review of competition. Yeah.
Yes, so, what I put together is board's authority, and the board meetings and the functions. I thought this might be pertinent for you all to have this information as we get into the general manager's role and the specific policy that's up for, amendment, if you would. So just to, state that the board, exercise control over authorize the exercise of the control of business affairs of the district as allowed by state constitution and other state statutes. You passed a resolution, you're very familiar with that. Approves existing personnel allocations, that's part of the budgeting process. And then the one that I wanted to just say that 3.5.3, the board reviews the general manager's performance and annually establishes the general manager's compensation level. This has always been in there. So I think that was the question that has come up, is what's that process? And then my desire to have something more public so that people don't think I'm setting my own salary. Because I think there was some misperception, in the past. So the next one, in every case, the will of the board shall be expressed by a majority vote of the quorum. And this next sentence is very important. No statement or act of any individual member of the board shall be viewed as the will of the board. So I can get calls from you, I can get requests from you, but there are some things like there's resources from trailers over to scrap to try to expand that. That has to come before you because that's a policy change or a standard change. So we want to make sure that we bring that back to staff. So that's very important because I know sometimes there's a lot of opinions and views that are expressed, but for me, I cannot accept direction unless it's from you as a whole. Makes sense? Okay. So then also, as you know, Hazel brings before you the policy manual, especially the personnel policies, because that is a statute required for the board. So the limited actions and authority of the board. Individual board members, as I mentioned, cannot give orders. Nothing in this section shall prevent a majority of the quorum of the board from appointing committees, which you have done for the interview committee, which I'm thankful. And then moving into the structure of the administration. Let's get into that. So for the formal administration, there's 3 positions, believe it or not. So it's me, the general manager must speak as third person, right? This is so weird. General manager, the finance director, which is Helen right now, and then the treasurer and district clerk. So Katerina is our clerk, And the treasurer we just hired, the accountant slash treasurer we adopted that. And then getting into the next page, if you will. These are the amendments that are before you to be, if you would approve these. So the general manager shall be the chief executive officer, you all know that, responsible for the day-to-day affairs of the district. The administrative powers of the district are vested and exercised by the general manager and the applicant, and their authority is executed through the district's employees. So I think that's a given, but it's never been a policy. So I want to make sure that it was solid in there. And I really wanted to highlight that the keys to this organization are in the general manager's hands. Very important to know that. And then by majority of votes, by the full membership, the board shall appoint the general manager, which is coming up for a successor. And so what I put in here is prior experience and education relating to the duties of the office, including but not limited to the abilities of public administration, leadership. I plugged in your planning because that's so important, and managerial capability. And here is the part about the annual review, setting goals, and I think you as a board wanted to make sure you had a say in the goals that are set, or at least have somewhere in here. You can hold a closed session each calendar year as part of the budget process to review the general manager's work performance and accomplishments during the year. At such time, the board will determine general manager's compensation for the upcoming year as part of the district's budget. The board may provide input for the upcoming goals of the district and provide direction to the general manager. The amounts and percentages increases can be based on market study with comparisons to other executives outside the organization at the same level, et cetera, et cetera. Then you may enlist assistance from the HR manager, which has always been done, and a compensation consultant. And then, this is important, I think, as part of a public open meeting, the board shall state the general manager's annual compensation, and at the board's discretion, sign a letter stating that such compensation that will be filed with the general manager's personnel file.
Are you saying that last point just so it's clear that that direction comes from the board and not?
We have to have a public hearing on that. Is that different? Because when we increase the city managers, right, we have to have a public hearing about it.
Sorry to speak up.
Do we have to have a public hearing? Because I know at city council, we have to have a public hearing if we increase any of the management. Interesting.
But what it could be is part of the budget process, so that it's out in the public comment section of the meeting. That makes sense. So yeah, good question. Any other questions so far? And then, I know there's been discussion about the general manager's position being an under employment contract. So I added that in 4.2.2. I'm not sure where else I could plug that in, so this seemed to make sense. So the benefits and work conditions for the general manager are established, set forth in the mutually agreed upon agreed employment contract upon hire and upon renewals. So if you have a question.
No, I'm just processing. I think it makes sense, so.
Yeah.
I can ask my hand.
Can I just do a online check? Can you guys hear us? Can we hear you before we actually shoot? Lori? Or anybody online?
Anyone? Anyone?
I'm starting to wonder if I should have done that sooner.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you. I just figured I'd do a double check just in case we have an issue sometime.
So do we need to vote on this, or are we just looking at it and we'll vote?
It's up to you, it's your discretion. It is up for amendment and request approval. If you have questions, please in here for anything HR related, but anything benefit wise was always part of the human resource system policy portion. And then the question is about, this position falling in line with other districts, cities as well, having it.
I think it's good to get that all,
That's good.
yeah, organized.
Yeah.
I'll make sure
Very thorough.
yeah. Motion to approve policy revisions for general managers and or review of compensation.
Do we have a second?
I'll say.
Sherry, thank you. We still have a problem?
We did.
I think we'll
Okay. All in favor?
I.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for updating that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That takes care of a lot of stuff.
And there'll be other policies I'll bring before you that have been best practices and standards that just haven't been formalized in policy and then before you. So the way I view my role, especially right now, is to get systems, get the organization ready for transition and the next chapter, as well as the team. So we have a leadership retreat coming up on Thursday this week, all of the Let's just get everybody ready. Look at this stuff.
On that note, and maybe without saying, but you're part of this review process of looking over the resumes that we're getting, because I think nobody understands this. I mean, I'm sure Hazel understands it plenty, but like, you've been doing this a long time, and even though you're leaving, I think you're deeply invested in the success of this organization. So I just want to make sure that you are involved in kind of calling through the resumes that we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, and Pam did ask me the same thing, and I was like, well, if it's not a headache, yes, you are. Because I think we all just assumed that you were gonna be there, because you know all the tricky questions to ask in incoming. So, all the gotchas. I've really been doing this job. So, you'll be able to spot anybody that's snuck by, so. Also.
Thanks for your confidence.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of stuff certainly to make sure that we get somebody as good as you, at least nearly.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And it's great with these policies, it definitely feels like your house is getting deep cleaned, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've never noticed all these things that we have officially in place. So, that's awesome. All right, we're going to move on to 3.5, expanding.
That what we just said. We're on the report.
Oh,
They came.
The cans and the.
I did it again.
This is really interesting.
This is.
I marked it at the beginning and at the end. So.
On this last week one. I'm gonna need to know this.
See, I was testing you all. So much attention. All right, 3.4, sorry. Policy addressing district property. And again.
Hey, so I talked to Rachel about this topic. What this is about again is that, no, it's okay. A White City resident complained to the city that, there were people firing on cans when they were out on the street. And this has happened before in the past. And, you know, had to chase down the owner of the business and looking at this, it's a different owner. It's kind of the same business. I think they sold it first.
Oh,
Kurt Lady.
Kurt lady did. It's that same news show. So there's some sort of connection, you know.
Very interesting.
So were these like full on stickered?
Table.
Thankfully, no, they were just.
Table.
So it was this one right here, okay.
So it's an advertisement for a service of painting, reflective numbers on the curb and it's promoted as police, fire, they can easily find your phone. It's $25. And I guess they do the service first and then people pay through Venmo and whatnot. But the concern is that, and in the past it happened as well, is that it looks like we're promoting this business. But we're not. So, and we don't even know if it's a legit business. Very well could be, but we don't know. So the thought is that to bring before you a policy to safeguard district assets And it seemed to make sense to put it in this section of the policy manual and working with Rachel. It's just, so do you want to review the policy before?
So yeah, when this was brought up to us, from folks at White City, it's like, what can we do? And it's a tricky one of like, what can you actually do to really make this stop? And so we're taking some efforts that will strengthen our position. I think both us and I think maybe this city's also looking at some things, that both sides can do to sort of prevent this. We ended up, we talk about what we did. Sure, first, yeah. So I did send like a cease and, or you did, send the cease and desist letter to the person saying, like, we're not authorizing this, these are private cans, and these are the reasons it's not allowed, and big concern is that it looks like it's, an endorsement, you know, either that it's an endorsement or it is us doing it, you know?
Right.
And we don't want to endorse anything like that for numerous reasons. Number one, like endorsing one business over others. And number two, we don't want people thinking that they're getting, you know, some government deal here, you know, and it's going to private. And then if there's any issues with payment or they didn't get their survey paid, they didn't get their thing, and you know, complaining to us. I mean, there's lots of reasons that we don't like this. And we've had a couple residents complain. So we just decided it would be nice if I could have, in the letter, referred to a very specific policy of ours. I mean, we were kind of citing just general law, like this is a trespass more or less, but just one of the many things we're considering is like, let's put something in our policy that we can cite to much more specifically. And so that's what this does. It basically says that cans belong to the district at all times. You have the right to use your cans for authorized, you know, uses. And then it talks a little bit about prohibited use. And no person can basically put anything on, any message, advertisement, graffiti, artwork, any sort of markings on our cans, whether it be with, you know, paint, markers, flyers, advertisements, any sort of modifications. Kind of going past just this issue, but also just, you know, the basement of our property in general, like we don't mess with our cans.
It's our trash, not yours.
Yeah, and then like tampering and damaging, like I said, we don't want it. It'll help in like lots of different ways, like if residents are doing things they shouldn't be doing with our cans, we can say this as well. Enforcement and penalties, we don't have the same police power that cities have, so it's more just, we'll pursue whatever civil penalties that we have. But that's why we're also relying on the city to maybe look at their ordinances and see if they can put something in there, because then they can have, you know, code enforcement folks or police go through and enforce the rule.
But if they're private cans, why would a city have an ordinance to enforce for private cans?
So I can speak to that a little bit, and we haven't delve into this too much, but our Title V city code, which I think was originally adopted out of Sullivan County Code and then revised, there is a section in there about door-to-door solicitation, where businesses are being required to register with either the county or if the city indicates a different party to register with. There are background checks. There's a bunch of processes that happen for a business. They're actually issued a Salt Lake County ID for every employee before they're allowed to go door to door and hawk the product, basically. So kind of coming at this from two different sides, you know, going can to can, I feel like, I don't know if legally that is the same thing, but at the very least, it does kind of come at them from two sides to say, well, one, cans are private property, and there is a policy that says, you know, our official stance on the matter is, don't put crap in our cans, you know, don't use that because we don't want the liability of somebody assuming that that is us and then having to defend it. And from the city aspect of obviously trying to keep our citizens safe from people that are going door to door and then just collecting money and never to be seen again, kind of a thing. For us, it's a big thing to educate our citizens that this is kind of a requirement. And hopefully we actually do want people, you know, challenging them and kind of saying, where's your match?
Exactly.
You know, why are you here?
And we're not going to swap small business. I mean, and I personally, my own house, I get flyers on my door all the time, and that would be the more appropriate route is go in, and I know it's quick and easy to just go down the street, but that's the problem is that we just don't want to like that's us putting the flyers on it.
No, I disagree with that at all. I was just curious because we have obviously the business license that requires solicitations.
Yeah.
But it's like,
And that's part of the other part of it, right, is that by going through the process of getting your permit to do door-to-door solicitation, you're given information on what is allowed. If somebody's got no solicitation sign either on their fence or their door, you're gonna get fined for knocking on that door anyway. Like that's in the code, that there's an actual penalty for that. It's kind of like the do not call.gov, like, you know, if you actually plug in a number that's calling you anyway, they get a fine if they're being abusive, so.
I just worry if it opens up a door, right, Pandora's box, because everything I ever do is legislation always has
Unintended consequences.
Exactly, and so then maybe the Linder Dairy guy says, you need to have an ordinance that says they can't get online, or, you know what I mean? Just, you can go down the list of things that
Well-
are private property things,
So like Winter Dairy, though, you subscribe to that, right? Like, do they, how often are they going?
but I subscribe to this also,
To the can?
pretty much.
Well, if you do, you're inviting them in.
Well,
Obviously, she says what's to stop Woodbury from stealing.
you
They
make an
come, we're not
ordinance
putting flyers on there.
and make you have an ordinance about it.
Yeah, well, that would be absurd.
I'm just saying, it just concerns me, and each city can make their own decisions, for sure. I was just, those would be the questions I would have, not to say that. I understand that completely, the issue, that they shouldn't put them on there for everything that you stated, and the district should be saying, doing their best to enforce that policy, but it's not like you send police out there to do
The
that.
issue is to, like, we sent the cease and desist and the guy came up and said, you're what, who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah, basically like, I don't really care, you do it anyway.
it wasn't even this person that called me that sent the cease and desist. That's why I'm like, there's gotta be something going on.
Yeah.
It's the guy I spoke with before. He was very adamant, you remember, I said, yeah, I remember you very well. And you're not welcome to do this, and he, basically said, you can do it.
But you can, if you have a policy that says.
Yeah, it just, we're trying to expand our tool belt a little bit. and just
Clean it out.
Yeah,
We
Give us
can
some
do,
teeth.
honestly,
yeah.
we can do very little, honestly, you know, I just,
It's more of a protection for liability than anything else.
it's just
Yeah.
nice to be able to point to something to say, you don't authorize this. Like, and is it really gonna stop him? No. But,
I mean, just like our, you know, Title V stuff doesn't stop people from just going to their domain, like it's an education.
and it's so much time and effort you want to put into endorsing it, but it doesn't hurt to have. policy.
I
Amen.
mean, it kind of comes back to, you know, different code enforcement issues that we have as a city. We're not trying to, you know, if we start finding somebody because they're non-compliant or something, we're not trying to get the money.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't care.
Yeah.
We're trying to get them to comply with that law. And that's all, that you know, like I said, this code was already told them. So we're just kind of looking at it to see, is there sufficient? Do we need to tweak it a little bit so that it includes like, even cans on the street or, you know, taking it to somebody's, you know, fence on the front, you know, I don't know. So it's just that we're just looking at that so that it, you know, not that we're necessarily chasing everybody down that does this, but if it becomes a big problem, we have something that we can.
Sure.
Because I can do whatever I want on the city.
Yeah,
And if not, to say, not only is it a violation of our policy, and we are governed in Indian policies, but like belongs to put into the city that else.
it's the only reason I brought it up, it's this message should be about those.
I mean, if you're concerned about it, so like city clearly is concerned with, so.
We've got,
It's not nice to have to be here.
White City's like a large neighborhood watch, basically.
Yeah.
And they're very good about reaching out to our city council when issues like this arise, like,
So it's important to us.
you know, they know when somebody's in the neighborhood that shouldn't be, that's not in there. And,
I have an area in Taylorsville that is just one call every week.
yeah,
Solicitor came by and this is help to have it in our codes that they have to have the license, that's help.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you putting this in. It's one more way. I will not be surprised if the day doesn't come that the garbage can either have the red view or be blue, white.
This is okay.
Gonna have the new use. You. Not the bee.
She does this.
Oh, go ahead, Pete. It's still muted though. Like, oh, hold on.
Hi there.
There you go.
So, yeah, sorry being online today. In person is so much better. The policy is really, I don't see any underlining, really ability to enforce this as the district. Because as has been brought up, there's city code that prohibits solicitation without a license. And, that is, again, back to city specific, with the exception of adopting a policy that includes malicious activities as in tampering, endangering, burning them up, running them over with your car, whatever they may be. I see that as a viable use of this policy that was presented. But for people to stick flyers on your cans, it's there's unless the sticker or advertisement specifically addresses or says that, oh, this is the district who is asking you to do this, then I see that as a different aspect. But if it's just a solicitation, the solicitation code that's already out there in all the cities and towns is, that's the enforcement mechanism. I don't see that the district really has that ability to enforce it. So, somewhat, I have to say, this is the softer side of Sears. This is a warm and fuzzy. Yes, we're going to do this, but there's no tie to the district on somebody putting a flyer, and that was easy for them. They're just going down the street rather than putting him on the door. That's my only comment for this portion.
I would say that the enforcement option we have is we do have the option to sue them for trespass. I just.
It's not usually
Are we going to? I'll say that out loud. But no, we do have that, and that's why it says, it's like, the enforcement penalties may include civil penalties, blah, 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 blah. Referral for criminal prosecution, meaning we refer it to the city or to the police to enforce.
I think that would be so for cities who have these policies in place, we can just call the city and report them.
Yeah, just enhances that, right?
Yeah,
Just allows
This
you to
is-
call and say this is involved later in our policy.
Yeah.
You can enforce that.
It's just one of those when people come and say, says who, we can say, well, at very least, like here, it's spelled out right here, it explains. And for just one piece, is it a huge thing? Is it super effective? I don't know, maybe not, but.
Well, for cities like Y City that has a policy in place, or other cities, you could then say, and in this particular city,
Right.
Maybe that could.
If you're caught, you have to clean the garbage cans.
That's excellent.
I think it's a great policy, it just enhances it. It gives something clear that you can send for the city, so here's our policy. I know as far as code enforcement, it's like it might hit lower on the priority, but it's what it is. Yes.
And I think the root of it, like I said, kind of goes back to residents assuming that this is promoted by us and we can now point to this and say, no, it's not allowed, we don't, versus just like, it's like somebody said, oh, I just gave these guys $100 for something that you as Woodward promoted. And now you're liable for that money, you pay me back, and it's, no. So they could, I doubt anybody would, but there's always the first time for everything, so it doesn't hurt to have it in there.
It's kind of covers our butt for liability,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'll check into ours, we'll provide that. Thank you for what we have.
So motion to approve policy addressing district property.
We have a second?
Second.
Diane, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Now let's try this again, expanding the seasonal container reservation program.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we had enough time to get here. So this is looking at, because I know it's a very popular program, the seasonal container, reservation program. And there's always a desire to have more. So in talking with the team, with Andy King, who's over our trailer program, our trailer rentals, and then Sione, who right now is managing the scrap. It's looking at, can we merge trailer rental and scrap somehow? So Andy and I sat down and looked at what would it look like to have two different scenarios. One where we have one FTE from trailer shifting over to the scrap program during that season, or if we use both of those FTEs. So it's tricky because it's not just the trailer rental, but we also have code enforcement that through cities that might need to have a rented trailer, right, or a container, as well as the city themselves if you're having to clean them. So we'll still have to iron out some of that and how we use the resources. But this is an option that you could look at, and this would be for 2026. So we would adjust some of the FTEs over to different programs as far as allocating costs. We still have the FTE. So in the first scenario there, and again, this is shifting costs. And by reducing the trailer rental, that is a program that does have a revenue. It's not a lot of revenue, but it does have some. So just keep it in mind that that pay and the cost would shift over to scrap. Okay, so these are the best estimates as far as the shifting one FTE over during scrap. Right now, we deliver 60 containers a day, so that would increase to 66 containers a day. And then the other thought is if we can recruit more seasonal CDLs, which is tough, but if we can, then we could also increase that to 72. We could get one more driver seasonal. But that's what's sort of hard. So it's mainly, we know we have FTEs, it's a solid person that's here. And then and the other scenario is using both of the FTEs for trailer rental program to scrap, and that would allow 12 more containers per day. So going up to 72 containers a day. So that cost shift is estimated just over $500K. And then the first one was $250,000. So you can see that makes sense. And then we do have also the reservations for the canyon. So reservation, Canyon City has that reservation available, just like scraps, they're scrap, right? But we use trailers because of the terrain up there. And then also for the town, right? So we would still need to figure out how to run those reservations for them.
On the trailer rentals, how often are they like maxed out? Like there's not a trailer available to rent because we're like, so if we were to move these employees over, like would people be like super frustrated because they can't rent one? Like what would that look like?
Yeah, I think that people would be frustrated, and then for the next meeting, as I mentioned, I didn't know for sure if we'd have a lot of time to get into it. Last year, if memory serves me correctly, we had about 1,200 rentals, right? And the majority of those was like 300 in Mill Creek, and then went down. Holiday had Taylorsville, and so, and then as you get to Magna Kearns, there weren't as many rentals, but they were still available. So yeah, that would go away if you use both of those things.
And just a food for thought, if instead of just converting everything over from the rental, what if we only looked at if there's an excess trailer that hasn't been rented and it's 1 or 2 days, 24, 48 hours from calling up on the waiting list and say, hey, 24 hours prior, we've got an extra dumpster. Do you want it? It's going to be delivered in the next 24 hours because it's not being rented only. If so, in other words, priority would take place for people renting them. And then if there's extras, just call up the waiting list within a 24 hour period.
That's the issue though, there's no extras, especially during the peak season when scrap is running.
Yeah, so, because when I kind of was trying to discover different ways of doing this, and even if it was the city just renting them and paying for it out of our budget to just help supplement that, I definitely wasn't thinking of taking away from revenue that we would get, and I definitely don't want to promote that. But if they are all being rented, then I guess that's the issue. I would push towards keep the revenue, versus us just paying for free.
One of my concerns, let me start over. Taylorsville residents, their biggest, now they have two, price increase.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're paying more for getting less, and that's through the scrap program. And when I look at the trailer rental and see that the difference is $514,000, if we could take some of that and increase the scrap program and increase the positive outlook of our citizens, and they feel like they are getting a little bit more out of the scrap program, then they may be able to go along with this price increase. And I think, and I've had a lot of phone calls with the new quarter or new monthly. Now they're like, you want it monthly, and now I get less scrap and I even pay more and blah, blah, blah. And I also am I feel like because the private sector is providing trailer services at somewhat equal, Wolford can do it less expensive, but we're subsidizing it. And I'm not sure that White City, to be really honest, should be subsidizing Taylorsville City using the trailer program. And I've taken a look at the price and what Taylorsville is used for the trade. We use your trailers a lot. And in all reality, the other cities are subsidizing some of these other cities. Like that went back to what Sherry said earlier. Is it really right that each city is being subsidizing each other's? And I think in this situation for trailer rentals, I don't think it's necessary that we do it because we have a private sector that will be able to pick up those loads. And then we do have the trailers, and a lot of them will do it on a contractual basis with the city at a reduced price. That's my thought. Our city is going out for an RFP. I doubt that we can beat the price of Woodford. I don't want to lose Woodford. I see the value of, it's funny how I have words until I start speaking. My vocabulary comes. There's value in volume. And that's why Woodford works, is because we have volume and we don't all have to go out and buy the trucks. We don't all have to have an HR for this, and we don't all have to have CDL drivers. But this is one area I felt like that we can save money as a district. We can put the costs exactly where they are for the trailer rentals. If we can increase the scrap program and make my citizens happier and they're not calling all the time, then I would love to see this happen.
So, and I have a question, and I don't feel strongly one way or the other on it, honestly. Because what I'm hearing is people want scrap the way it was before COVID. And so like, I'm looking at this, like getting 6 more containers a day, like, I'm just wondering, like, do you think that would?
I don't know,
that?
it's maybe a good question, Emily.
Because I don't think people would. I think what people want is what it was before, and it seems like that's still not feasible. I mean, if there was a way it was, I think we would all be on board because I think everyone likes that better. But so I'm just like, because if you think that would meet their desire, then not like
I really can't tell you.
Yeah.
Everybody wants it back the way it was, put them on the streets. I'm hoping, because I've seen the background and I've seen the evolution of getting them in the driveway. Okay, now we've taken those people that were on the waiting list and they go to the top this year and blasting that information out. is that going to leave some of the pain that they are seeing with the lack of scrap on the street? I hope so. And then if we add 6 more days, will that eventually make up for that and people could move on? I hope so. But at the same time, would I, if that wasn't a concern and I looked at the balance sheet and I saw that we were subsidizing the trailer rental by $500,000, I'd still be asking, is that really a program that we want to continue when the private sector can do that and we can take those full-time employees and put them in other services that the public isn't providing?
So you're proposing the option 2 to just essentially, that's essentially eliminating the trailer rental.
Pretty much, right? Pretty much.
Pretty much. And that's what you're saying your support is that, okay, just.
Yeah. But, well, no, this is a board and everybody has a right.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't have
I don't have the answers.
We've got Tessa online, go ahead.
Hi, so just listening to some of the comments, I feel like a lot of them are repeat comments, but coming from Copperton, I think the newest heartburn has been having these placed in the driveways and then having a lot of other residents dumping into them in the middle of the night. So we're starting to actually see that having them placed on private property in these driveways is not stopping other people from using the dumpsters. So I wanted to bring that to the board's concern, or that concern to the board. In Copperton,
Can I ask you a question? Sorry.
Sure.
Greg, can I ask Tessa a question?
You may.
I'm in town with Taylorsville. Tessa, are people leaving their junk in the person's driveway or are they using the dumpsters in a person's driveway?
So we have a unique situation. So the majority of the houses here actually share a driveway with their neighbor. So I don't know if some of the board members have remembered, but we brought this concern to the board because of the fact that you do have to share that driveway. We do have an ordinance in place that those driveways cannot be blocked, and a lot of them don't have extra space. So we were able to work out some of them to where, you know, those driveways could not be blocked and the neighbor was not being, helpful with that they could have them placed on the street. However, those ones on the street have not been the ones people have complained about. It has been the ones in the driveways. Most of them are placed pretty deep into the driveways when they're able to. And people are actually coming and putting this stuff in the dumpster. We've seen.
Tessa, can I just throw this out? I think the intent of having the dumpsters in someone's driveway wasn't that it was theirs solely. It was, let's get them off the street and avoid contractors filling them up or just people driving by. I caught a contractor doing it over in the park and I chased them down and rounded up the other day. It felt so good.
Sure. But when the homeowner is reserving those and then they are signing the waiver to be responsible for anything that's put into those dumpsters when they're put on their private property, that becomes a bigger concern because now that property owner has signed a waiver stating they're responsible for everything that's going in there. And then you have another neighbor who shows up in the middle of the night and throws a fridge in there or, paint or something that just isn't supposed to be in there.
Thank you, Tessa. Absolutely, I agree. That is a problem if they're throwing refrigerators and especially mattresses.
So with those
Take
things,
refrigerators in that?
We do.
Sorry, guys, hold on. Tessa's still on.
so with those,
Tessa, I don't know if you can
Oh.
get closer to your mic. But go ahead.
right? Okay, just let me know if I need to be louder. I can shout. So basically, that's just a concern I wanted to bring up because those are the things, the feedback that I've seen from this year that is new from any of the other years. And WFWRD's been great about making special accommodations and going out of their way to make sure that Copperton has been accommodated with our unique driveway situation. However, I do have to echo the comment earlier, everybody still reverts back to why can't we do it the way we did before? That brought to our council the exact same comment that was made twice earlier. Why don't we just leave it up to each of the communities to decide, do we want to have this program in our city or town? And if so, then we're responsible to make that rental. And if that comes with a price, that comes with a price, because if it avoids a fee increase, it avoids a fee increase. If there's no way to avoid the fee increase, we need to take the fee increase and the scrap program out of the same sentence. And that was all.
I did Tessa. Sorry. Now, good job.
No, thank you for clarifying that.
So if you got rid of scrap and you got rid of trailer rentals, it's over $2 million a year, is that what you're saying? Savings, right?
I might have new Dean Taylor's for that.
Yeah, I don't think they can get rid of scrap.
No, I agree, but that's,
They'd probably give up their garbage cans.
They do, and we definitely wanna have a means for residents to get rid of their bulk waste, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because each program, trailer and scrap, and the landfill vouchers are helpful for illegal dumping, to reduce, I should say, to reduce the illegal dumping on the streets or in the canals or wherever. So that was the whole purpose of them coming about. The container program is perceived free service. We know it's not. It's part of the monthly fee, right? So definitely want to keep some way for people to get rid of their bulk waste. If we could put it, I think I've said it before, we're now in the 6th year of scrap. I'm putting in residence driveway. Can you believe that? It's been 6 years. It's over half, well, yeah, because we are now in our 15 years, our own organization, so it's been over half the time of separation. And we wouldn't have made the change ever if we didn't need to, but I think you all understand it's because of CDL driver shortages, which is still happening. Still happening. Like I said, if we could get enough seasonal drivers to come in and CDL, we would put it back, but we just can't get them.
If we could get them, could we afford
That's
to
a good
go back?
question. Yeah, if you want to, I could put together like a scenario of what we're spending this year. And if we, double it, right now we have 10 driver allocations and normally we can't fill those. But we could bump it up to what would we really need and I could show it to you.
Yeah.
But that I don't know if we can fill those seats. I don't want to have a perceived.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Well, one thing I would urge us to look at too is that when we talk about doing something that's gonna incur a new cost on the district, and I'm not talking about box paper clips, but a, large amount of money, that we also maybe look at the projected, fee increase schedule that shows us what would that change our timeline for a fee increase or needing as part of that discussion, so that we don't blindly just say, hey, let's adopt something that's gonna cost an extra $500,000 and not consider that how much is this gonna affect our next fee increase, whether it's by a more dollar amount or having to do it soon. Because that is obviously a big topic as to why a lot of city councils and stuff are having the discussion, so.
When you say fee increase, and Patrick, do you have a question?
Or I'll wait till you're finished, but
Just for clarification, so, cost increase, what we're proposing is actually the cost shift,
Right.
but you're talking about if we were to put it
If we
back.
were to- No, right, if that's potentially going to cost the district more money, if we're gonna be spending more money, I think we by default need to bring in that schedule so that we are aware that, okay, well, that will shorten, or make a fee increase happen sooner than it would have if we didn't make this decision. But
It does.
You're talking about if we went back to the original scrap.
or any other thing that we do that is gonna cost district, $500,000 or $1 million more.
I'm just, I don't have a strong one way or the other about it, honestly. I can see both sides to it.
Well, and in this scenario, aren't we technically losing the revenue of $175,000 a year,
Yes.
which is effectively costing us that much more money? If we, at the end of the day.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what I would say, we just did, the annual billing is a fee increase, which hopefully we'll find other avenues to reduce that with, looking at different pillars and whatnot, but it's just something that, in my mind, like, I'd like to see that as additional data, that if we're going to do something like that, what does that do for our budget and schedule fee increases and what those are, when they might happen, just as a lengthy discussion. Yes.
So, as Pam put it, we've been doing this for going on our 6th year now. We're gonna bang our heads on this every year for how many more years, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people I talk to want to go back the old way. We all kind of do, but yeah, then you got the double-edged sword where, hey, I didn't get off work until noon and all the dumpsters on my street are already full. So you have that, we're having to continue. So we're in a situation where we're damned if we do or damned if we don't. But I know we're trying, this second option, I really kind of like it, but it all really comes down to is how can we get drivers? And that's the bottom line. So how do we get drivers to create this? Not create, but to close the gap so we have people and bodies to drop containers.
But we already have these drivers, right?
Yeah, the FTEs are here and they, yes.
So if we did this, essentially, we would either be option 1, dramatically reducing the trailer rental program, or option 2, essentially eliminating the trailer program. Would that be just during the scrap season, and then we would have it running the rest of the year? Right?
We'd still have leaves, and that's part of those allocations shift over to the leave back program.
Okay,
But we still try to do some trailers during that time, yes.
okay, but as far as just the trailer rental, so essentially we would say, if we did option 2, we would say, we don't have any trailer rentals during this summer, essentially, and then, but if you want to rent a trailer in January, we would offer it. Is that? Okay.
And we're under March, basically.
If we didn't, I guess I'm still trying, I want to see like the numbers of like how booked out our trailers, are the trailers that we have available for rental, are they like booked out every day? Like we always maxed out on those
During this peak season, yes.
during the summer?
So there's still probably availability, let's say in, I can't say if it's in August or not. Renee, do you know when we fully booked yet?
I have not checked, so
Okay. We can come back with that information. Next one. And it's on for information, just some direction, so I'm getting the direction of bringing back additional data and info, because again, this will not be until 2026.
There was, sorry, I think there's a hand up too, but there was definitely more reasons than just drivers. What you're talking about, that's my situation now. I come home and the dumpsters are all full, and not where they full, they were full from contractors. There's no way for us to monitor that, and not where they just full, but they were all over the street, all over everywhere. So which costs us a lot of money that our residents are having to pay for people who don't even live in the area, sometimes dumping out their trash there. So there was a lot of reasons besides just lack of drivers that we decided we have to go this direction. So, I just think that's an important point, because that's a reason why we put it in private driveways, to say you're responsible, so we don't have tons of stuff out on the street that shouldn't be being dumped in our dumpsters.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. As the program has changed over the years, moving them off of the streets, what I don't see, and again, we're completely different in town of Brighton. We just get, either reduced rate or a free trailer once a year. What is, and as far as future aspects of the program, I don't know if we've actually discussed eliminating the program altogether. And then when we're looking at cost savings for the district, that's, and just looking at the numbers for 2024 costs, that's $2.2 million that's going out by the district. So the question is, and again, I think part of this has been proposed, is that the cities and towns themselves start to assist their residents by offsetting costs to some degree, but it still shifts some of the burden to the individual homeowner who wants to get rid of massive amounts of trash or wants to use their voucher to go to the landfill and dump it for free. So the vouchers are a whole lot cheaper than putting a trailer instead of in front of their house. So I don't know, when are we going to consider actually dismantling the program altogether?
Thanks, Keith. That's a,
Yeah.
so that's probably something if we're gonna have that discussion, I think we definitely need to survey the residents, and every member of the board needs to potentially bring that up as a discussion point in their city meetings. I would be very curious to see how White City responds to that, but
I would just say how.
just imagine if you could actually come back with a rate reduction because of something that major. Tessa, comment.
A couple of the comments that I wanted to make have just been made, but I think each time we've had this conversation, we can probably all agree on the fact that each of our representatives have given a very unique and different situation of things that are happening in their own city. Brighton is not the same as Taylorsville. Copperton is not the same as Magna. I mean, there's so many different scenarios that none of this is black and white. It definitely creates more issues when we have to make special accommodations for each and every different city for this. There was a comment made about, not having White City subsidized for Taylorsville, but you have a lot of different scenarios going on within this program that are exactly the same as that. Having them out on the street, yeah, I see the issues that were brought up with the pros and the cons. There are definitely pros and cons to each of the ways that this has been handled. But I do have to agree strongly with, I think that each of the cities need to decide what they actually want out of this program, what their citizens want out of this program. And if it does, like I said earlier, lead to a cost saving, then it may be time to dismantle and restructure this to where it fits a more general situation rather than it fits, the larger cities. Because I do think a lot of the smaller cities suffer from it.
Okay.
I would disagree. I think as a smaller city, we benefit greatly from the scrap program. I think Holiday would be very opposed to getting rid of the scrap program. As much as people are complaining about the changes, it's maxed out within minutes whenever the reservations come up. We very much need this program. I would be very.
I do want to clarify and say dismantling does not mean discontinue or eliminating. Dismantling and restructuring just creates a better scenario instead of trying to pull all of the moving parts that are already in motion and redoing teeny pieces at a time. Looking at it from a larger standpoint rather than the way we're doing it. I mean, we've been doing this since I've been on the board, and it's been about 8 years now. And since the whole situation, 6 years of it running, there has been these type of conversations every year.
I totally see what you're saying. I think for my city, I think that my perspective still stands though.
I think that's, I think White City would be the same, but I believe that, it wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing to survey the residents from Woodward's perspective, at least to get some kind of concept of what residents do want. And
I think we can go back to the surveys that we do with the residents.
is that?
They're done bi-yearly or every year.
Yeah, just recently, we didn't get a big response rate, but the unanimous decision or feedback was do not eliminate it, even to save the $1.40.
I think that kind of puts it to bed personally.
Yeah.
Tom, did you have a comment? I thought I saw your hand go up.
You know, I was thinking, I think that it might be fair for us to review kind of what this does look like for some of our smaller cities who do look or who are in Woodford, you know, specifically the cities who are, you know, maybe under, I don't know, 2,500 people. I think that captures Copperton, Brighton, White City, everybody else. Although I do think that for the larger cities like Holiday and Mill Creek, or while people have complained about the changes, I think people are generally still very happy with scrap, and I would oppose making any large change to what we have right now.
Actually, Tom, White City is at 5,900, but that's okay. We're very dense, and that's actually goes along with why I think White City would probably, I'm not trying to speak for them, but I would imagine that they're very much reliant on getting rid of a lot of the bulk waste, a lot of older homes that have old appliances and just stuff that kept around since the 50s and 60s. So, but yeah, we're actually fairly dense for the size of our city. But I appreciate being roped into that.
Copperton is under 1,000.
At the end of the day, the only reason why scrap works is because of volume.
Yeah.
I don't think individual cities could feasibly do it.
So on what we have before us as far as like reducing the trailer program or during peak season, getting rid of it and moving it for scrap, it sounds like we've given you some direction as far as continuing this discussion. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Yeah, bring back more information.
Yeah.
And one of the directions I made was to bring back some information of what if we didn't have enough staff to, you know, do more containers into driveways or whatnot. I mean, what would that take? And the number of butts in the seat, but that's really what we need. And I don't want to, we will bring back that information. I just want to make sure that it's clear. And when I bring it back, to say that this may not be possible.
We appreciate you doing the research. I think, yeah.
You know what, and good news at this point to residents, scrap is increasing by 10 cents, it's something.
Yeah.
You know, it's something.
And honestly, in my city, people were really excited about what we did this year as far as like, if you're on the waiting list, you get priority. When I was talking to people about that, they were like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So that's been.
Yeah, I'd be excited to hear how the.
I am too.
If people utilize that or not.
Yeah.
I have high hopes, it's gonna change the tide.
Yeah, along with, you can't prove a negative, I actually haven't seen as much bickering on White City as far as the cans being completely sold out, because I think a lot of the people that have tried every year finally got one this year. So, but I can't prove that, like I said, it's just kind of the feeling that I get from the community.
They don't come with good news.
Yeah, it's, no news is good news. So that works in my industry in IT, so, anyway, I appreciate everybody's thoughts on the discussion. It sounds like we'll kind of circle back to this and see what else is possible or not possible, and we'll figure it out from there. I don't know that we have a closed section. I look at you because I don't know one, but so we'll move on to that. Does anybody have any board business? Matt, you have a question? Matt? Okay, just checking. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the request items for the next board meeting of July 28th at 9 a.m. I hope all of you can make it. It's 2025 second quarter financial report, reviewing the previous billing, plan for monthly billing, fraud and risk assessment, expanding scrap using trailer program resources, the general manager's report. So, it's going to be take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, Emily.
Second.
Matt, Simon, thank you. All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Those that are on the
Cigarette.
I think there's only some guys. Keith already? See, yeah, by quality lasts forever.
No.
Keith already jumped in.
Oh, I'll take it.
Get back in here.
Laurie, are you still there?
Sorry,
Okay, let me next, Keith.
correct. Forward the resumes of people that are.
Once we get them, we will be getting them out there.
That's why I wanted to stick around for a minute.
Oh, I did not hear that.
For you.
So if you're on the hiring,
Sure.
don't screw this up. It's already a question.
I don't think we approved it lately.
Thanks, everybody.
What's that?
So, let's see, John, who's John? Is that JT?
Sure.
Keith is gonna jump back on. Sione, can you jump on? And we don't need this recorded.
I don't know why. We have